that many people congregate in a small space outdoors in a very long time. The beach was wall to wall. Like I said, they closed the bridges, so we ended up taking a water taxi. So it was kind of like how in Tampa Bay they do the parade actually on the bay.
Yeah.
There were just water taxis full of Panthers fans, and the people on their boats were like honking and having an amazing time. So it was definitely a once in a. We tried last year. It was pouring rain last year, so the parade got delayed, and then getting there was impossible. So this year, the sun was fully shining and very hot, but it was a huge turnout. Huge. We had
Man,
helicopters.
I love the NHL and I love the Stanley Cup, but I think we need to we need to get on with SimplyThick John and Friends here. So
Yeah, there we go.
I'm very generous. I'm very jealous. Really, sounds like a great day.
You know, you have a
Anyway,
lot of hockey like me, yeah.
anyway, hey everyone, welcome back to SimplyThick John and Friends, the show where we talk about dysphagia, and without making it feel like a medical lecture, even when there was a Stanley Cup parade yesterday. I'm your host, John Holohan, the founder of SimplyThick, a thickener enthusiast and the guy who has made it a rule not to work on vacation. And I take that very seriously because vacation time is sacred. And this is a show for anyone who has cared for someone with swallowing challenges or just wanted things to be simpler, safer, more dignified. Whether you're a clinician, a chef, a caregiver, or a curious problem solver, welcome. You're in the right place. So the theme of today's episode is we're going to talk about the 2025 IDDSI Symposium, which is next month in Newport Beach, California. We're going to be tackling questions everyone's whispering about, but nobody wants to admit, what happens when the theory meets fire hose reality, and especially when regulators start looking over our shoulders and asking us, are we implementing IDDSI and things like that. We're going to take a look at some of the stuff that's going on in some of the states with regulators doing things. We're going to talk about the value of IDDSI festivals and collaborative learning that it provides. And believe it or not, they're actually going to have a panel this year of regulators who will actually allow real questions and really join the conversation and provide us with a perspective on why some of the regulators are starting to ask questions about IDDSI and, really citing people if they're not doing IDDSI. We'll share the takeaways from networking hacks to real world fixes so you can go from panic to prepared. So whether you're one of the ones who's registered, we still have a lot of seats open, or you're still on the fence, by the end of this episode, you'll know exactly why the symposium is a can't miss and can't delay ticket. You want to get there, you want to stay ahead of the curve. So let's dive into it. So to tackle this topic, I went and got Amanda Demane to come and talk to us. She is officially a speech pathologist and director of clinical operations for the Division of Speech Pathology in the Department of Otolaryngology at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. And she specializes in the evaluation and treatment of oropharyngeal swallowing disorders, as well as head and neck cancer, speech and swallowing restoration. At the national level, she holds the role of lead volunteer for the International Dysphagia Diet Standardization Initiative's United States IDDSI Reference Group Implementation and Advocacy Committee. That's a mouthful. But most importantly, she's currently the co-chair for the 2025 US IDDSI Symposium, and she did co-chair the inaugural US IDDSI Festival in 2024. So that's a lot of background as to why Amanda's the perfect person to help us understand the value of the symposium that's coming up. But before we get into that, I always like to play a little game, and we call it Simply Stump John. And the rules are simple. This is 2 truths and a lie. And so Amanda has provided us with some truths and a lie, and I take it very seriously, but I'm really bad at it. So Amanda, why don't you tell me your 3 statements, and let's see if I can figure out which one's the lie.
Sure. Well, John, first and foremost, thank you for having me today. So 2 truths and a lie. So the first statement is that when I was 14, I spent an entire summer in Italy with my grandmother and a lot of it extended family.
Okay.
The second statement is that my husband and I are high school sweethearts. And the third statement is that I am the youngest of 3 siblings.
So now I'm going to have to dig back into my memory of all the stuff you've told me and all the times we've gotten together and stuff. And so I know that you spent a lot of time in Italy with your grandmother and extended family. Now, was it when you were 14? I'm going to say that one's the truth. I don't think you're going to try and trip me up with a technicality and be like, no, John, I was 13. And I feel like you've told me you and your husband have been together a very long time. So I'm going to guess that you're not the youngest sibling.
You got it right. Yep.
Woo!
Oldest of 3 siblings. So
You're the what? Oldest?
oldest of 3 siblings. Yep.
Okay.
So
I'm
I
the
have a
oldest of
brother and sister. So
I'm the oldest of 4. So we got that in common.
and
So I think that
my grandmother was one of 9. So yes, there was a lot of extended family
Ooh,
when I spent the summer
ooh.
there. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a lot. I don't run into a lot of people who speak Italian. So it was kind of when I found out you spoke Italian, and then you showed up at the uh, IDDSI Congress in Florence,
Yes.
and you were speaking your Italian there. I was like, that's cool.
Yeah, I was very lucky. My grandmother's siblings all lived very close when we grew up in New York, and we spent a lot of time, and they were always speaking Italian around us, and so that's how I learned. And so,
Just absorbed it.
yeah,
It's the best way.
it's a great thing. So,
All right, so we're going to jump into the thick of it now. For me, getting into IDDSI, part of the best part of it has been the collaborative learning environment, everything that goes on, meeting people across disciplines and learning from them and things like that. So I've always thought the symposiums, or whatever we call them, are great things. But I think sometimes people get a little confused because sometimes they're called festivals, or they're called congresses, or symposiums, and so I thought we should just start out and talk about, why do they have all these different names?
that's a great question. As a volunteer for the United States IDDSI Reference Group, I've had the opportunity to attend, volunteer, and chair events in multiple countries. So whether it be called a festival, a symposium, or a congress, it's all about the stakeholders from the clinical world, the industry, and food service. And I think that initially these events were held as festivals in the spirit of gathering professionals who were intrigued and highly interested in IDDSI. And then in my experience over the years, and I know you can attest to this too, as IDDSI has engaged more individuals around the world, these events have really evolved based on the feedback from this array of stakeholders globally. And so, in fact, the theme for this year's symposium in July was sparked by a pressing concern from one of our exhibitors from the 2024 US Festival, which led to this more focused program targeting on implementation.
Yeah. I think from my perspective, all the different names are just things we've kind of tried on a little bit, and they're a little different culturally, where you'll see that a different term is used, but the whole idea everyone I've been to has been basically the same. It is, first and foremost, it's kind of a celebration of IDDSI and what it's brought to the industry. Secondly, it's bringing in people to share their experience. There's almost always an implementation journey. There's almost always somebody who's doing something creative and different. And it's really about bringing a couple hundred people together to just kind of share ideas and experiences. And sometimes just to pat them on the back and let them know they're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
And
I do think that even the terminology or the semantics of it as well is like what you said, in different countries. I think those words have a little bit different weight, right, for the professionals and the people who are gathering. And so if you have someplace like the EU where there are so many countries involved, finding a word like Congress has a little bit more of a meaning when you're trying to gather across all these different cultures, like you said. And same thing for the states, from one state to the other, and from a national level. So I think it certainly has played a role in that as well.
yeah, I think when we picked the word festival last year, people just had an idea of like a party.
Yes.
And I mean, that would have been great, right? IDDSI compliance appetizers and drinks, and but that wasn't it at all. There was hands-on learning, and there was teaching, and there was all kinds of good stuff like that happened. So I think early on we decided we are going to just change the word to something a little more that would help people understand it. It's more of a sharing and an environment to learn from. Symposium, I think, is a good word, and we'll see what the feedback is when we get together in a few weeks, right?
Yes. Yeah, we're excited.
So let's talk about why this year's symposium is especially important and why it's well timed and located and all that kind of stuff. What went into picking Newport Beach?
So as I mentioned earlier, we had an interest that was sparked by one of the exhibitors from last year who was based out of California, and they were receiving feedback from their clients in specific facilities about the California Department of Health speaking to these regulations and trying to engage facilities in implementing and adopting IDDSI, because these regulatory bodies are starting to identify it and use it in part of their regulatory process. This is in the same national regulations. So the California Department of Health following with that. It started with the message from the California Department of Health, and then the federal letter from CMS followed, using, to kind of highlight that they want the IDDSI implementation wording and the evidence with the testing methods to be identified when they're looking into these reviews and regulatory.
So that was about a year ago, right? When
Correct.
CMS issued a letter.
2024, around June. It started, like I said, with California, and then subsequently in the June to follow with the with CMS letter. Correct.
Okay, so that was like a couple weeks after our festival last year, right?
Yeah, the timing was literally kinsman, I guess. It all kind of, like I said, with this first festival in the US and kind of just the gathering, and then looking at some of the points that we were talking about and the topics that were brought up. That's what sparked doing a really quick turnaround for 2025. So we built a program committee and got ready to go. And that's why we picked California.
So like, I first heard about IDDSI in November of 2015. Mm-hmm. And when I saw it, I fell in love with it. It was kind of, exciting. I offered my help to help with implementation as best I can. This just came across my desk today, so I'm kind of like living down memory lane. But I published an article in the ANFP Nutrition and Food Service Edge back in October of 2017, talking about the differences between IDDSI and NDD. And yet my understanding of the enforcement framework is very limited. And so I know last year at the festival, we brought in a retired regulator, and her presentation, she never said anything. So I said, well, here's what the regulation says. And she just kind of went down it and said, so, is IDDSI evidence supported? And everybody in the room starts nodding their heads. And she goes, okay, so the AND has stopped supporting the National Dysphagia diet, and all of the professional organizations have stopped endorsing it. So is NDD a viable alternative? And everybody was like, no, I don't think so. And then she's like, okay, so in all of our enforcement things, what does it call it? Standards of practice, standards of care. What is the standard of practice and what is the standard of care? And she's like, is there anything besides IDDSI that you could justify? And to me, that was like, I've been involved. But when she did that, I was like, you could hear a pin drop in the room.
Right.
And I was like, oh.
And it was one of those sessions that went over because there were so many questions and there were so many scenarios, because there are so many different professionals who attend these events. And so I think that's why we were fortunate enough for this year that we actually have two regulators from the California Department of Health that will be doing a specific talk on tips for survey success with IDDSI and the process that's kind of entailed with that. And they've been so lovely, and we've been able to meet with them and plan so that, the attendees, as they are gearing up for implementation, since that's the goal of this event, they can get a better idea of how to prepare for their facilities and their teams, and making sure they're within these guidelines, and really have a really good understanding. Because again, like you mentioned, it can be very confusing and discerning trying to break through like the NDD versus the mapping over to IDDSI and all these things. IDDSI has created so many wonderful resources, which we will review in this event as well, as part of, mapping from your current diet with every level of your facility. So your kitchen, your chefs, the dietitians and the speech pathologists, how to train the nurses, it's going to be full-fledged in that regard. And we're really excited to have an array of professionals presenting and then also attending to build these implementation plans for their facilities.
I mean, no matter how you feel about the regulatory environment, no matter how you feel about how it's being enforced, whatever, to me, you got to give credit to the California Department of Health that they're making a couple people available to come to this event and to face a crowd and to explain their logic and their reasoning. So to me, like, especially if I'm in California and the event's in California, here's an open forum where you can come and you can hear it straight from their mouth, what their thinking is, why they've gone down this path, what they're looking for, and how to prepare yourself. So I'm looking forward to that. Probably that'll be one of the highlights for me, to just hear from regulators and from their perspective.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very valuable for the attendees. And I think that, again, I think it's a really integral piece of setting people up for implementation, not just with the tools from the IDDSI perspective, but also from, like you said, the regulatory portion. Because I think having a little bit of insight, and it will create a different level of preparedness for these individuals as they step into implementation and each kind of building block along the way.
Yep. So who's the symposium for? I mean, it's weird because you're a speech therapist. A lot of people are RDs. I'm a vendor. Who are we gearing this for?
So I think, there's a lot of different subspecialties or professions that would benefit from coming to this this year's symposium. Sorry, see what happens with the semantics after
Yep.
on a few different committees. But I think specifically, one of the wonderful things is that, we have, again, an agenda and a program that's on the IDDSI events page. Anyone who's interested in reviewing it, it has all the information there. And it really has a nice outline of how we're targeting not just speech pathologists and RDs, but also the kitchen, the dietary managers, the chefs, and anyone who is even glanced over an IDDSI implementation process, or the creating an IDDSI champion team, which there are a lot of great webinars and resources on the IDDSI website that have been built by the USIRG and other subsequent volunteers and the IDDSI Global Board themselves. They can see that there are so many different players that you need on your team. I would even say anybody from the administrative process in facilities that wants to learn more to bring back for their team, to have it from the other perspective. We want those people to attend as well. I think there's a lot to gather from this symposium. And this agenda was really, handpicked to be where anybody who comes in can go back with an implementation plan, like a physical form and a plan. We have two really great hands-on sessions. They're going to be labs, and one is for testing and discussing modifications, and the other one at the end is going to use everything from the theory portion and from the testing and discussions to then create this implementation plan and go through potential challenges or barriers that they may face as they head back to their facilities.
So those are concurrent, right? So you have to pick one or the other?
No, they're both. They're
both.
The latter half of the day. Yeah,
okay. So you can do both.
Yeah, we're going to start off. Everything is there's no concurrent sessions. It's not like last year where we did the lab.
Okay.
This is embedded in the program. So the morning is mostly theory, and then the afternoon is more practice hands-on. So the implementation guide or the planner will be presented at the beginning of the day as the attendees learn all this theory. And then as we head into the afternoon, after lunch, everybody gets sleepy. So we have to keep them on their toes and awake. So we have a lot of hands-on, and we have a wonderful team from a local hospital that's implemented successfully. And the Hope team will be providing hands-on, and we have multiple volunteers that are going to be helping each individual go through these testing methods and the process and building their implementation plans.
Well, that's going to be awesome. When people ask me who should attend, I'm like, anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody. I mean, honestly, I think somebody who is a caretaker for somebody at home could show up for this, and they're going to walk away with something valuable. It could be, the lowest person on the line, the newest person, who's cooking all the way up to the administrator of the building. Somebody's going to take away something and something different. So I've thought buildings and facilities that send 3, 4, 5 people from different levels and different perspectives are going to get the most out of it, because everybody's going to be looking at it a little bit differently.
And we also have an excellent group rate. We've been really, this year, I think I've seen, with being on the planning committee and co-chairing, we've seen a big increase in groups attending, which I think is, again, the driving force of implementation, because we know it takes a village and it's not just one professional. There can be a misconception that either a speech pathologist or the RD or the dietitian is the person who's going to, they may be one of the primary champions on an IDDSI team, but it does take every level, like you said. And then, I work in outpatient care too, and IDDSI has been a huge part of my practice for my patients and their caregivers, and it's given them so much autonomy. So I definitely mirror your sentiment about caregivers or even patients, individuals with dysphagia that want to learn more and understanding things, because their journey changes day by day. So it's good to have that, and understanding those things can really go a long way. So we welcome everyone. There is no, whoever is around and wants to come to Newport Beach.
I think the committee has worked hard to build a program that is understandable by anybody too.
Right.
You don't have to come in with a preconceived notion. You might want to probably read about IDDSI before you go there, because we're not going to do this is what IDDSI is session.
We do have the webinar for anyone who has not attended. We did do it. It is available, the recording, on the IDDSI website. So anyone who's registered and wasn't able to attend the it's kind of like the IDDSI 101, just the breakdown, so that heading into this event that you'll have that background. And again, between the global board and then the volunteers from around the world, there are so many resources on the IDDSI website. I try to guide people to kind of learn it. It has a lot of intricacies in it, but they just updated it, and it's really wonderful and so easy. And there's so many resources for anyone who wants to learn more about IDDSI and start implementing.
Absolutely. And so we didn't even really talk about it, but an IDDSI reference group is also kind of a weird term.
Yeah.
Maybe just explain to people, what is an IDDSI reference group and why do we have one in the US, and what are they?
So the US reference group was adopted in 2019, right before the pandemic. So, and essentially, IDDSI basically reached out to professionals who were interested in being involved in the development of planning for the subsets of like IDDSI implementation or IDDSI in general, like in your respective country. So as a volunteer, we have all these subcategories. Some of them, for me, it's implementation advocacy and communications, which happens to be with the social media posts and awareness for the stakeholders and people who are interested in attending IDDSI or IDDSI related type of events, or webinars and such. But essentially the volunteers are working in their respective countries to create these resources and to be a resource to stakeholders so they can learn more about IDDSI. And anyone who is interested in IDDSI or uses IDDSI in their everyday practice or would want to volunteer, we are always looking for more people. So the more the merrier on that end. But again, we have we have a research group. So we're looking at what the data is out there, and then developing resources. I think in the 6 years that we've had the USIRG, it's kind of evolved, both with like what the content is that we're creating. And then a lot of that is what streamlined and drove us having our first US event. So once we had, past the pandemic and then the resources built and getting feedback, we've also had surveys that have gone out to give us a temperature or on what IDDSI implementation is like across the US and what have been some of the barriers and what have been some of the successes with implementation. And that's helped drive the content and the program agenda for these events and some of the webinars and the pre-recorded sessions that are available.
So what I've found with the reference groups, I happen to be a member of two, is that they're really helping tackle local issues. IDDSI is a global organization, and everybody thinks, oh, it's IDDSI, it's this big thing. It's it's a dozen people, and they're all doing it as a volunteer too. I don't think anybody's earning a salary. Oh, well, there might be some of the people in the staff in the IDDSI office,
Right.
but it's not like there's some big, huge organization and they're not selling anything. They're supported by sponsor companies, and they try to spend the money very wisely, and they have a board of directors, and they put out the documents, and they say the documents speak for themselves. And then the local groups take them and help answer questions in a local language, or try to um, change the handouts a little bit. Like I think of the word like crisps. Crisps are what
Right.
potato
They
chips are called in other parts of the world. Or they'll say pips or bits. And you're like, well, what are those in the US? And we're just taking it and helping modify that so it has the local flavor. IDDSI is global. It has to have words that mean more to, you know, 5 billion people, not 2 billion. So we're taking it and saying, well, it's in the 300 million people in the US, how do we say this? Or I belong to the Canadian one as well, and we're doing it up there, kind of the same type of thing. And it's spreading the word and answering questions at the local level and in the local regulatory environment, because the regulatory environments vary a lot across
right.
the globe. So and it's all volunteers. IDDSI is volunteers, the board of directors volunteers, and then the reference groups are volunteers. And then the volunteers are putting on this festival or symposium. See, I did it too. Um,
It was Congress in Europe, and I was on, and I
yep.
was lucky enough to work with some wonderful volunteers from all over Europe on that planning committee. And so, same thing like what you said. I mean, I think sitting on these planning committees for different countries has really been eye-opening too, because like exactly what you said, the goals and even the semantics or the terminology from each respective country, they shift and vary with whether it's regulatory, whether what the need is, whether it's just spreading the word. I mean, a big part of it was getting a declaration signed in Europe, right? Because there's so many countries. So, there are different goals based on the location. And like you said, it's kind of the grassroots of where you're, as a reference group volunteer, you're really respectively looking at what's needed in your area and how you can, disseminate the information and have it hit home. So I think that's a big part of it.
Okay, so for those that are still hanging on and still listening to us after all this time, uh, I got to ask, what makes you go to so many? Because how many have you been to?
I volunteered for my first one in the UK in 2021. And then I chaired the US. I've probably been to 5 total, between a few countries. And it
I
was
think
just,
this will be my 7th.
yeah, we were
So
talking about this the other day. I think it's just been, I love the planning of this and engaging and meeting new people from all over the world, literally, that have the same underlying goal of helping others really get a better understanding of IDDSI. You told your story about the first time you've heard of IDDSI, and I think I told you this too, that the survey that came out was definitely mind-blowing to me as a speech pathologist, seeing how much terminology was being used to describe
yeah,
one texture level or liquid level, and the differences and discrepancies in how many labels there were across all these countries. And then I had my former colleague and supervisor. She brought in the original. We didn't have the funnels yet. It was still using the
syringes.
syringe testing, and I said, who's going to do this? I was like thinking about it, and then I started doing it, and then I started teaching it to my patients, and it made a lot of sense, and it just opened up a whole world of autonomy. So at first, and then once I was a believer, I could never turn back. So, and then I got involved, and so and I do think a lot of it too is I think gathering people together, either who really are enthusiastic about it or who need to learn more, can really make a difference. And I've seen the impact that it's had. So it's been a wonderful experience. And I'm thankful and grateful to IDDSI that they've taken me on as a volunteer and let me do this work and work with amazing people. So
I've found that I can learn something from anybody, anywhere. And there's different perspectives and different regulatory environments, but just learning the tools and the language, and because people who are in a different framework or different set of constraints, they solve the same problem differently. But that doesn't mean that I can't learn something from them, and then I can take that back and do something here.
Right.
So I've been to festivals in Canada, the UK, and Italy, and my October is just way too busy. I had Brisbane on my calendar, and I
No, that's a big one.
scratched it off a week or two ago, but I was really trying to make that one work. But
Yeah, and the volunteers from all over the world are wonderful. We've been invited as USIRGs to go to the Asia. It just didn't work out with my calendar. But again, like same thing like you, but the opportunity to meet people and to exchange ideas and problem solve through stuff and to see it from different perspectives. Just for that alone is a reason to attend. So we have the space if you guys are around. If you have questions, you can contact us through the IDDSI website or the US events page. There's a contact for the email. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. We're still taking registrations. We still have some hotel space if you want to come from another state or a different part. California is a huge state. So if you need some place to stay, we still have the hotel up and running where the event is being held. And we'd be happy to host you for the event.
And Newport Beach is beautiful, right?
Yes, I've been there a
So,
few times, so yeah, it's a beautiful place. You might run into a housewife or two from
yeah.
Bravo, so you never know.
So we're going to, people are going to walk away with practical tools. You're going to get the hands-on framework for implementation. We're going to go through that in a session. They're going to do hands-on testing, because you're not just going to read about it, you're going to actually do it, which is always funny. I always find it amazing. Okay, it's been 10 years for me, but I hand people the funnel and I'm like, here you go, run the flow test. And you just see them like trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
So
their eyes go open wide and they're like, wow, okay, now I get this. Yeah. And I think, I think we've learned again, and we've grown and developed from previous events where we've done some hands-on labs like we did last year where they were concurrent, so you could only go to one. And some of the feedback that we received is like, we would have loved to attend all three. So that's why we try to kind of build that into the program this year. And I think it's really going to have a great impact for the attendees. Again, going home with something concrete. We're listening to you that have attended the events in the past and trying to continue to develop and give you the resources that you need. So that's the goal from these events as well, whether it's a symposium, a festival, or a congress. So
so come meet some like-minded people, take away some good resources, have fun, and get your hands dirty.
Exactly.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to thank you, Amanda, for taking some time out of your busy schedule and being my guest. Can we throw the other people under the bus a little bit and be like, it was one of those things where I said, hey, anybody want to do this? And Amanda was like looking away and everybody else took a step backward, and they're like,
but my name got thrown right in the ring. So that was that. So
yeah. So I'm very happy to have had the opportunity to talk about this with you. It's a very important event and appreciate your time. And people have questions for you. How should they get in touch with you?
They can either message me through LinkedIn or I run the US events email. So I'll get that there. That's there. It's the US events at IDDSI. I think it's IDDSI.net, if I'm not mistaken.
US events.
Yes. All one word at
okay.
IDDSI.net. Yep. And those emails will go to us. And then you can go to the events page that's right on the IDDSI website. It has all the information for the symposium and how to contact us as well.
Okay. So everyone, thanks for watching. If this was helpful, pass it along. I'm going to see you again. I think it's about 3 weeks. The next session's already scheduled. We have Mary Rybicki coming to talk to us. And I'm heading to the mountains myself to go backpacking with a bunch of Boy Scouts for the next couple of weeks. So I know it won't be until at least mid-July. So I will miss you guys, but looking forward to the next episode when we bring Mary on to talk some more stuff about implementation. And again, thanks to Amanda, and thanks to everyone for watching.
Thank you, John.